Hi guys, welcome back for your break. Now we're going to start on a new topic, which is the CRUD model. It's a different model from the MVC model, but it falls under the MVC model, and it's another framework for web developers to understand how a web application may work. So we're going to go through what CRUD stands for, and it's basically stating the basic functions of data storage in a web application. So firstly, what C stands for in CRUD is create or add new entries. R stands for read, so it's when you read, retrieve, search, or view existing entries, data entries. U is update, to update or edit existing entries, and for D it's delete, to delete, deactivate, or remove existing entries. So this is the model that most data storages in a website kind of follow by. And how I'm going to demonstrate this to you is through a function called scaffolding. So scaffolding is basically this pre-written code in Ruby on Rails that pre-assumes what you need in a website, and it generates the folders that you need according to the CRUD model. So how we're going to demonstrate this is by creating a user resource through scaffolding. So we're going to think of users as objects, as data storage objects that can be created, read, updated, and deleted through the web via the HTTP protocol. So kind of like when you sign up as a new user, and then you kind of sign up, that's creating a new user. You want to read your profile, so basically everything that you enter when you signed up, you can edit it, like change your password or something, and then also delete it if you don't want like your entire sign up. So yeah, what we're gonna do first, we're gonna run the scaffold command, which will go by Rails generate scaffold, and you're gonna name your scaffold, which in this case it's called user, and then once it's generated, you want to pass these two parameters, which is basically what you want in your database columns. Even though I did show you that you can manually edit it by accessing the migration file, you can also do this if you already know what you want in your columns and just directly put it in your command line. So yeah, just note that there is no need to include a parameter for the user ID as well as the timestamp because it's already automatically created. So yeah, let's go do that. We're gonna, okay, honestly I can just put G scaffold for user, and then we want the name of the user, and we want email, which in this case is a data type. It's called string. So as you can see, it has created all these things, right? It has created a new database for me. That's for one. And it has created a new model for me. You see, a new user model for me. It has created. Okay, it hasn't created. Yeah, it has created new views for me. So if you can see through these views, there's a from view, there's a user view, edit, index, blah blah blah, which I will go on to show you what they look like later. And so now we have controller, user, and we have our model. So yeah, isn't that great? So it does follow by the MVC model, and now I'll explain how you can see the CRUD model through this. So now you're gonna migrate your database because it's a new database that you created, right? So we're gonna go through the processes that we did just now, blah blah blah, and yeah, now you're gonna run the application to see the database. So let's run that again, and let's pop that up, and we're gonna access that database, and now we have a new database called users, and as you can see, we kind of included the name and email parameters. So yeah, right, now we're going to go on and see how the CRUD model is in action. If you access users, so if I do this, okay, so now I don't want to look at the database, right? I want to look at the users page. You can see that there are two columns, and I am actually able to create a new user. And there's a function, a button for me to click on to create a new user. And you can see in this case it routes me to a page called users new, and this is largely because if I go down to my routes, oh, you see it's still like home index. So if I were to access my page, it will still bring me to the hello world page because I haven't routed it yet. So let's just go down to users. I'm going to go through, we're going to click new user. So new user is basically the create part of CRUD. So now you're going to create a new user in the database with the user ID number 1. And this is actually, the ID number is pretty automatic. So I'm going to go ahead, create a new user. And then I'm going to click create user. So now it tells me user was successfully created. And you can see if I access users 1, I can actually see and read my user information. So this is the read part of the CRUD model. So now I'm gonna wanna go back and edit the information. So let's say I wanna add more to my name. I can actually edit it. So users 1 edit. So this fulfills the U of CRUD, the update part. So I want to specify that the meta name, and I can click update user. Now if I go back to users 1, you can see that everything was updated. But let's say now I want to delete the entire entry, and that will basically delete this entire entry. There is a destroy function for me, and if I destroy, it tells me are you sure, it comes up the prompt, and I destroy it. There's nothing left in my users page because I just deleted it, and that fulfills the delete function of CRUD. So yes, that is the CRUD model in action, but now we're gonna revisit the MVC model and see how everything comes into play. So firstly, there's this diagram that I pulled out for what we did just now, and we're gonna go through that step by step. So the first part, the browser issues a request for the user's URL. So imagine you're kind of accessing. Okay, we're gonna do that again. This is gonna bring us to the router, right? And the router is gonna basically direct our what we enter to an appropriate controller. So it directs us to the index action in the user's controller. So now let's go back, define our user's controller. So this is it. If you see over here, it does say get users. So if you do /users, it would direct you to this action. Okay. So yeah, let's go back to that. So that's how that action actually got directed. So now that the third step, it's basically saying that when you access /users, you want to see all the users, all the input data types that were in there. So basically, the controller will take this action to retrieve all users, and this is done through by the user.all command. So if we go back to that, you can see now that I want to, as a user, I'm requesting for the action users. So the controller will, as the waiter, he will be like, oh, okay, the customer accessed this. So that means I need to tell the model he actually said this, right? So if we were to access our model, okay, there's nothing in there. Okay, let's go back to that. The user model, okay, we're basically going back to our migration, right? Pulls all the users from the database, so you're here. So this, go back. Okay, this is your user model, but there's nothing here. So we're gonna look at the migration that we did for the users model. So it's basically accessing this particular database, and yeah, that particular database, it's gonna pull all the users from whatever this database has, and it's gonna return this list back to the controller, and then the controller will recapture everything. Okay, yeah. The controller will recapture all the information that's pumped back into add users, because user all equals to add users, that variable. And then it's passed on to the index view. And this view will use the embedded Ruby to pass it back down to the page as HTML. So we're going to see that by going to views. See this? Where is that? Okay, username. Yeah. See? So because it's a Ruby reference, it's within the Ruby parameters. And you can see here it is, that variable, that all the users' names are kind of captured in here. Okay, so that's why you can see everything. And the controller passes this HTML back to the browser. And that's how you can see the MVC model back in action. Okay, so yeah. Now we're gonna go on to the exercise that you're gonna do for today. You're basically gonna learn how to identify the MVC model and each of the CRUD actions that we created in this particular scaffolding exercise. So, but before that, you're first gonna associate the root route with the user's index. So basically, when I access my file, I don't want to be directed to the hello world page. I want to be directed to the user's index page. So I want you to revisit whatever we did in the lectures and associate that route with that. Secondly, I would like you guys to work as groups to take out pieces of paper and draw out this same MVC diagram you did for all the actions that I stated in each of the CRUD actions. So basically, like everything else here, identify all the actions so that you can familiarize yourself with the MVC model, and you will be able to hopefully reapply this in your future activities. And if you have extra time, use the front-end code to update the views over here to match your existing projects. So like change the color, do whatever you want. Yeah, so hopefully you guys can reuse this in the near future. Okay, so yeah, that was it. Thank you very much for listening to this very long lecture. I hope that helped. Up next, for the next couple of lectures, we will be breaking down CRUD step by step. So instead of using the scaffold command to create CRUD, you're gonna create the models, views, and controllers step by step, so as to understand the process better and be more flexible in your projects.